we use the terms a lot when we're not even conscious of it. We use terms like cloudy thinking or not clear. I don't understand that. That's not clear, like the clear weather. Or we say somebody got angry and stormed out the room, or we say the person has a hot temperature, a hot temper. Or we say when someone's in love, we say they're starry-eyed. Or we say a person is hot-headed, referring to the weather. So we use the weather terms because we were a little more connected to it, but as we became more urbanized, we lost that kind of connection as to the weather's influence on our general health, its influence on herbs, our thinking, our moods, and state of consciousness. Right now, you see that we have a picture here, what is commonly called the third eye, which is the part of your brain. We're inside of the brain itself, the brain cells, these bubbles here, brain cells that are magnified to about the size of a car, if you would use the equivalent. And this, of course, is a galaxy-like looking energy inside of our brain called the third eye that floats in this fluid. Fluid is in this space called the third eye. And as you can see, these brain cells, they look like clouds. This galaxy-like energy, the third eye, looks like a galaxy. So we actually have cloud formations and energy inside of our body. We have the outer sphere and our inner sphere. We have the outer space and our inner space. But this plays an effect on us because we're so related to nature, physically and mentally and spiritually. Now, our energy levels get changed. The weather influences our sleep. Of course, the ideal temperature is between 68 and 72 degrees for sleeping. And of course, white people prefer a 64-degree temperature as ideal for them. Mostly with a 65% humidity, that's kind of ideal for sleeping. So when you increase the humidity, you increase the amount of water in the body, and that can cause you to be rather sluggish and lack energy. And the temperature, the energy depends on how much you have on your liver. If the temperature increases or decreases, it taxes the liver. And of course, you use a lot of the liver's reserve, and that decreases the amount of energy available to your brain. And that, of course, is one of the reasons why temperature can influence mental illness, because it causes the brain to get oxygen hungry, any change in the atmosphere. So we're going to look at the weather and how it influences us. Let me push to a little more weather for you to see. We're somewhat aware of storms. Let me show you some storms. Get this for you. Is that correct? Yeah. These are some kinds of the types of storms. We have a thunderstorm here. This is a thunderstorm, which plays a lot on our eardrums and changes the electromagnetic vibration of the fluid inside of our ears, and this affects our brain. Then we have the winter storm, which you see in the cities, and this is causes a lot of snow, and the snow is crystallized forms of water which reflects light and vibrates in our system. Then you have this whirling type of tornado, a spinning funnel-like cloud that resembles the ventricle funnels in your brain, the water-filled spaces. So that influences the water-filled spaces, the holy waters in your brain. Then you get the hurricane, which is a swirling type winds, which influences the brain through the eardrum, influences the fluid. When I was talking about the influence, I was also talking about the magnetic vibrations that occur within our body. Now, we all are conscious of this one. I'll show you this one so I can show you how this weather really engages us a lot. Especially, we're looking at the body's weakest joint, the knee, which engages the muscles and bones of the thigh and shin in a complicated kind of fashion with the ligaments and cartilage and tendons. Now, what happens is that a person, say for instance with arthritis, when the humidity gets high or low, it can affect them, because once you get this humidity is the weight of the earth, weight of the atmosphere on the earth, and it causes more fluid to stay between these joints. Or it can cause the fluid to come out of the joints the high humidity, high weight causes the fluid to come out and the bones rub against each other more. So a person with arthritis would know when humidity changes because they would have more pain in the joints. Now, some of the herbal supplements for that, I just thought I'd focus on that while I have your attention on the arthritis. To help a person with that kind of reaction, we can use the primrose oil, which you see first here. Some people call it evening primrose oil. And some people use a chemical. This is a synthetic chemical, which I do not recommend that you take. But the calcium magnesium would be beneficial. 2,000 milligrams daily, and the coenzyme Q10, which is right here, 60 milligrams. And garlic is used a lot for arthritis because it thins the blood and it helps to get rid of free radicals, and of course kelp. And the multiple enzyme, which would break down the waste. Hydrochloric acid would be the most beneficial enzyme because it alkalines the system. And niacin, which helps increase the circulation, because the circulation decreases because of the pressure, the weight of the earth. The weight of the atmosphere on the earth decreases the circulation, and the niacin opens up the vessels and increases the circulation. And of course vitamin B6, which is good for pain, and PABA. These are the B vitamins in general, which you use for arthritic kind of conditions. But as I said before, it's the humidity that increases the weight on the body, and it decreases the amount of fluid available between the joints, which is held by little sacs that we call bursa. Now here again is the weather and its effect on us. As you can see, when the weather changes, it has influences on us. Like you can get the fluid increases or decreases. When the weather is gloomy, we tend to go towards sweets, you see. And these sweets would irritate our nervous system. And you want to kind of stop that craving for sweets when the weather changes and gets gloomy, so you would drink red raspberry tea or bilberry. You see? Now when you have the thunderstorms, as I showed you before, you're going to get this kind of taste for spices and salts. And because of the frustration and changing conditions can be rather unstable and frustrating, and then you would be more toward red clover. Of course, the work habits of a person with these kind of conditions also show what the herbs they need as well, but I'm just focusing on what the person's taste buds according to the weather here. Most of the storms and the cloudy conditions, very cloudy weather, tends to make a person lean toward spices, as they say, as well. But it's mostly the need for calmness when during storms, especially hurricanes and such, that cause a person to lean toward dairy products or spice, and the person that causes spaciness. But we use fenugreek for that kind of vacillation. The weather carries electromagnetic charges with it, and these charges influences various people differently. You have the South Pole, which has a positive magnetic charge, and it spins to the right, and it activates serotonin, that's the South Pole, and it decreases your growth hormones. Let's see, I have that straight for you. Now I'm talking about the weather and the sun. Let's see if that's clear for you. Yeah, I'm talking about the sun, and I showed you the brain itself has these clouds in it. And all of this is the sun striking the earth. But as you can see, most of the sun's heating effect is lost because it's reflected off the water, off the clouds, off of buildings. It's reflected out, so we don't get the full impact of the sun itself, the temperature from the sun. But the sun goes through the air and goes through the atmosphere, and it strikes water crystals and strikes the clouds especially, and causes the clouds to radiate certain types of colors. The refraction of the light of the sun striking the cloud causes this cloud, for instance, will be dominant maybe in orange. And orange is a peace and calming color. And if it's striking the rain, the rain refraction of the light can cause a lot of red, which is relaxing and aggressive, or when the sunlight is refracted or reflected or absorbed through rain crystals or snow crystals, it may produce indigo, which is rather intuitive and spiritual. Or you can get into violet, which is for harmony and joy, or blue, which is creativity or peace, and yellow, which is mostly for memory and learning. That's why you have yellow school buses and yellow pencils, and green, which is for growth. So the colors made by the sun striking the water or the clouds have this impact on you, on your whole state of being. And weather is very important. As I mentioned, the magnetic clouds, the magnetic charge of the atmosphere, and I was referring to the colors that it's made. These are the colors that are made off of water. Let me finish this whole chart before I go off it, because there's a lot on here. We have the air pressure. I'm just going through some basic information about weather. We have air pressure. You have high pressure and low pressure. And this has an effect on the wind. It has a warming effect on the earth, on the atmosphere. See, when you have high pressure, that means that the air weighs less. When you have low pressure, that means the air weighs more. Cold air is concentrated oxygen. Hot air is thin oxygen. High pressure here causes the wind to go down. Low pressure makes the wind come up, and you get this swirling effect that's caused by the pressure. Pressure is the atmospheric pressure of the earth, of the atmosphere on the earth. The wind is moved. The movement of the air is by the pressure. The air moves from a high pressure area to flow to a pressure of less, or to a low pressure area. It's high pressure moving to low pressure. The air moves into low pressure area, and it forces the air that was already in this high pressure up, and it moves it around. And I referred to how the clouds absorb color from the sun and the crystals of the little water crystals within the clouds. The moisture in the clouds causes this kind of color reaction. Here we have the moisture leaving the water, being evaporated, going up to the cloud, and then coming in contact with a cold front and being condensed, and condensating, and coming down in the form of rain. We have many clouds. We have what we call vapor rivers in the sky. We have 5 vapor rivers in the sky. These vapor rivers mostly start in Africa. There's about enough moisture in the sky is about equal to the Amazon River. But as I mentioned before, the polarity is a factor. Let me show you this cloud. See how that cloud is refracted, coming through the sun, striking the water, giving you this color. The color plays on your memory. And then we have these shades of green in here, which would help with growth. We always have these colors, and these colors have effect on your mind, mood, and state of consciousness. As I mentioned before, you have the North Pole, which is what we call anabolic, which is more like growth and building, and has a negative charge, and that causes energy to spin to the left. Whereas the South Pole causes energy to spin to the right. The North Pole would be alkalining and melatonin mediated, and it stimulates growth hormones, and it also decreases the amount of fat you can store, whereas the South Pole is acid and active and serotonin, and growth hormone decreases in the South Pole, but you burn more fat. But this is the effect that these colors have in the refraction of the rays of the sun on the body. You can't overlook that. I'll probably go over this again because it's very important on your mind, mood, and state of consciousness. Now then, as I mentioned before, the sun has a negative ionic charge, by the way, and Earth has a positive ionic charge. These are clouds and water vapor, which is being refracted and causing this kind of action in your emotional state of being. Now, like, for instance, you would say that we're on, like, the side of a hill here. See these hills? Now that's very important for Europeans, because they should be around 4,000 to 5,000 feet elevation on the side of a mountain is best for them, because it duplicates the kind of environment that's best for their biochemical makeup. So they should be on that side, ideally on the southwest side of the mountain, about 450 or 4,000 to 500,000 feet elevated on the side of the mountain. Because heat decreases the amount of circulation they can get, where it increases our amount of circulation. That's the effect of these clouds of moisture on us. It helps to strengthen our state of being. And let me show you another effect of the atmosphere and environment on us. Remember I mentioned the purple? And this has an effect on your spirituality. This color. It's made by the sun refracting through the moisture in the atmosphere. In this color we have the purple, which is usually associated with spirituality or indigo and intuition. So that would heighten that kind of response in your body. I think I may go back to those previous days just to go over it for you so you can get a better understanding of the weather and its impact on you. I'm going to go over those again, but I want to show you how the weather, the polarity changes, the electromagnetic vibration or force changes when you're around falling water. Falling water has that a negative charge, and the negative charge bonds to impurities and cause them to fall down or precipitate. It's a negative charge on your body. Being next to a waterfall can lighten your spirits because it gets rid of the impurities in your system. Now the barometric pressure, as I mentioned before, is the weight of the earth caused by this moisture or rain on your body. The barometric pressure on your body, if it's high, it decreases the flow and decreases the amount of oxygen available. It's the same as being in a high altitude. Before storms, the barometric pressure goes down. And this can cause sleeping problems or violence, or cause hyperactivity, and cause for people to eat more. This is the moisture in the environment. The measure of that is what we call barometric pressure. Anything below 29.8 will increase sexuality, that kind of high air pressure, and it causes you to be more relaxed. And it can cause forgetfulness, cause you to lose a lot of items, and it also causes suicides and depression and irritability, that high amount of barometric pressure. It has this effect. And I mentioned the food and sex. It can stimulate food and sex addiction, by the way. Hyperactivity, delinquency, all that's influenced by the barometric pressure. If you have a high temperature and high humidity, you're into a heat wave that can cause a lot of violence. Crime is high during that time. You have 30% more crime when you have overcast and dreary days. You have more crime before a nice day, or after bad weather and there's a nice day, you have a drop in crime. That's the effect of the weather upon us. Let's see if I get this clear for you, and you can see that. Yeah. Now we're looking at a mountain and we're high up. You see the clouds there? We're high up. So we can see the clouds. This is the humidity, this is that pressure on the earth. And this is light again being reflected. As I mentioned before, the heat from the sun is not all coming directly at us because it's being reflected off by the water, by rain, by the sun, and of course by buildings. The sun's rays, such as lightning, going against the water, cause a negative ionic charge. Sun's rays and lightning moving against the water cause a negative ionic charge. Whereas the friction from the wind moving against the earth causes a positive ionic charge. And this changes the electromagnetic charge in your brain. As I mentioned before, if you have positive charge, you have less of a magnetic charge. The magnetic charges are positive and negative as well, and they influence your mood and state of consciousness. This is the sun, as you can see, being refracted through the environment. You can see the humidity, you can see the moisture there. This moisture coincides, has a correlating effect upon the amount of moisture in your eardrum and around the moisture that's held in your bones and cells, because we are water. You have to be careful, especially during the direct sun. Let me show you that again. Because a lot of us are not really tuned into the weather as we should be. Just back up again. Back to the sun. The sun has a tendency to, we get out in the sun and we forget that you can get a heat stroke. That's when you don't perspire and you're hot and you're dry and your blood pressure goes up and you get a headache. That's a sign and symptoms of a heat stroke from being out in the sun. Don't perspire, your temperature's high, you feel dry, your pressure goes up. That's a heat stroke. And then children and the elderly, they don't seem to be conscious of what's going on. Heat exhaustion is when your temperature is not high, your blood pressure is low, but your skin feels clammy and you perspire. That's heat exhaustion. And children, especially children and elderly, they don't seem to be mindful of that in the cities. They just ignore it. We have to be more in touch with the sun. Sun flares, for instance, cause a positiveness, and it also can stimulate mental illness. Their conditions can get worse when the sun flares up. Anything below 60 cycles in electricity, or anything above 60 cycles in electricity, will stimulate melatonin. Below 60 cycles stimulates and drains the body of the serotonin. These are hormones made by the pineal gland. The horseshoe magnets that black people used to have was trying to change the charge of your pineal gland and system, put you more in harmony. I'm going to show you those two pictures once again. One is showing the sun, and one is showing the absence of the sun and its effect upon your body. This has been proven even in such things as with students during hot and dry weather. Their test scores drop. Cool and dry weather, they have a drop in test scores. Any change in atmosphere affects the ability of their body. This was proven in 1939 with Massachusetts State College when they test people before a storm, before the weather change. If they test them before the weather change, they have an increase in their test score, but if they test them after the weather changes, their test score